So in the morning, we spoke about all these interesting tools and methods and all these things that we have done and we're planning to do to help with linking data and working with digital humanities and digital heritage. So Sarah and I, we're going to focus on what we can do with this data, especially for those who are planning to engage the public in whatever you are doing in your research or in your mapping and annotating. So first, Sarah will introduce about data analytics, what they are and how they can benefit you. And she will also provide a couple of cases of how data analytics have been used in other settings. And then I will speak about my experience with using data analytics in citizen science, and in particular in the Enquire project, that is an OU platform that we use for citizen science on social sciences, bottom-up investigations, and also from my experience with working with natural history museums in London, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, and how we used the data analytics to improve this engagement with the public. So now on to you, Sarah.
Thank you.
And let's listen
about... me press the button and make sure I want. Thank you. So it's been really interesting listening to everybody talking about the difficulties of making connections between different types of data, because the world I come from is data analytics and specifically learning analytics. And one of our issues is that we have so much data. Every time somebody goes online, every time somebody is learning online, they create data trails and they create these links between which page did you go to from where, how long did you watch a video, how did each user deal with and use the websites. So we have a whole load of data created automatically through data trails and what we're going to do with them. So we can look at the patterns, certainly, and that can start to help us predict future behaviour and identify how users like to work online. And as Maria said, my area specifically is learning analytics. So my PhD project is looking at student chartered accountants who are learning either in the classroom or online, and we're looking at how they interact with a particular mock exam. And they have 200 data points that they create, and we can look at that data to see how well they're doing, or perhaps how well they're not doing. So we have all of this data, but we need to show the right people the right data, and in a useful format. So there's no point us, as I learned very early on, throwing a whole load of data points at people and saying, there you go, that's exactly what you did in your online exam. And they'll say, yeah, so what? I failed. What should I do? So we have to take these massive data that I've got there on the screen and make it into something lovely and beautiful and useful. And useful means it's got to be actionable. So for my student chartered accountants, they need to know, well, if I did something, how did I do on this area? What then do I do to improve that area, and how do I make changes? So action is really the key. So it has to be in a nice, interpretable format for those students to then take action and improve their performance. So we have to keep the good stuff. They have to know what they've done well, and they have to have ideas on how to change the elements that don't work. And what I found in my particular research is that people like different things. Some people like visualization, some people like some words, some people want to be guided back to other formats and other references. Everybody wants something different. So that's the challenge, is to create that from the data trails that we have. And Maria's going to talk about how she does that in citizen science.
So following up on Sarah's learning analytics, I have to say that learning analytics is something that we have started using a lot in citizen science as well, because many of the museums and science centers, they really want to engage people in what they are doing, but they also want to help people learn about what they are doing. So it's a two-way engagement and not just the users providing information for the researchers and the museum. So learning analytics is one of the uses that the museums can use the log data for. So what we have done with the Enquire project is we were trying to understand how do users engage and why some people drop out. If you're going to engage the public in what you're doing, you probably want them to be engaged and not to leave your project after a couple of weeks, because then there's no point of you engaging the public that is not engaged. So what we try to do is to understand who our participants are and whether they behave in different ways. And what we have done is that we try to classify them in different profiles based on their behavior patterns. I'm not going to go into statistics and the metrics we used for that, but we were very interested in understanding how often they engage, how long they engage, and they remain loyal to the project or the program, how systematic they are, which also depends on whether you run programs like blitzes, bio blitzes, or something like that, regular educational programs in your centers or museums or institutions to keep them motivated, and whether they are passive or active participants. It's not that we don't like passive participants, but if they are passive because they are feeling that English language is not their first language and they are not confident in using them, then you can do something to help them for that. Or they may be passive because they are not very confident in using technology. So you may just need to simplify the technology you're using in your project to help them be more active. So these apparently are fictional characters, but these are things that we heard from our participants. So we have loyal users, and these users, they have very strong internal motivations for participating. For example, they may be very happy about Greek history and archaeology, and this is the reason they want to take part in the project, and they remain loyal, they are there, and they contribute throughout the way. Then we have some users who are persistent. So they stay around for a long time. They may not have strong motivations, internal motivations for participating, but they may like the community that you build around that project and program, because community is a very strong motivator, especially when it comes to the public engaging in some aspects. So some people, they may just be there for fun, for the people they meet, for the community, to discuss things and not do things by themselves. And then we also have hardworking users. They just like that Ilyssus, that is Elysia in English, Iliada.
Iliad.
They may like Iliad, and they're just for that project and nothing else. So they will just come for that project, and then you will lose them. So if you want to keep them coming, then you have to know who they are and make sure that if you release something similar, they are the first ones to know. You send them out a to-do list, a short task that includes that project that they are interested in. So how can we improve museum engagement? So we were looking with natural history museums at how young people participate in online and hybrid citizen science programs that are facilitated by museums. And the museums really wanted to find ways to engage the young people more and not lose them on the way. So again, we tried to use the data analytics from platforms like Zooniverse and iNaturalist to understand how they participate, what they are interested in, how can we improve their participation, and whether what they are contributing is good enough for you to use in your investigations. So we used iNaturalist and Zooniverse for this case study, as I mentioned earlier. And we heard from young people, for example, that online grown-ups with their fancy gear, they prefer or they can only observe slow movers and tiny creatures because it's easier for them to like take a picture of an ant instead of chasing a bird with their very poor cameras. So we can see that adults and young people may be interested in different things. And this is something that you may want to have in mind when developing your own programs, that not all programs might be the same interesting for everybody, and especially for young people. So other people may not contribute as much, but they may want to evaluate other people's data because this is what they are more interested in. So instead of producing their own data, they may want to annotate existing data and help others with making sure that what they provide is of good quality. And finally, we also have, again, the people that they are on and off because they're interested in particular projects. So again, you have to target these people when you release something that is of relevant to them. And in this way, you will get them to increase their participation too. So that's for us. I also included some boring academic references for those who want to have a look at what Sarah and I have been talking about and what we found out from engaging with data analytics, and especially in citizen science settings. So if you have any questions about what we have presented, you're more than welcome. Or maybe I was very clear.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you very much for that, Maria. I was wondering whether you have any experience or whether you know about experience in the difference of working in projects that are more science-based in comparison to projects that are more closely related to the humanities. So it might be the case of literature projects, for instance, that are aiming maybe to translate or aiming to transcribe a particular piece of text, for instance, or historical text. And then others that might be data sets, putting, maybe information in rows or things like that. Do you observe any difference between these communities, or is the approach, is the citizen science approach the same to every field?
When you say differences, do you mean in terms of user motivation, data analytics, and behavior?
Yeah.
Well, from the research we have done up to now, we noticed that there are no main differences.
Right.
It's just people come and live for the same reasons. And this is mainly because their motivation is not strong enough. So you have to keep developing and understanding how they behave so that you can target.
So there is no formula.
No, there is no formula. Yeah.
The project successful. I guess
Like our Zooniverse research was including heritage projects as well. And there was no differences between the different disciplines. It was just the same. So, I mean, it's good news for heritage because we have more research on hard sciences. And if there are no significant differences, then we can implement what we already know for the heritage sector. But
How's your thinking evolved? Or have there been any changes since you started this work, where you are now? Any new insights or anything? Things that didn't work, for example, things that you can now understand how to do things better?
So when we were working with Zooniverse, many of the participants complained that it feels like a brainless task because they just had to, classify things without a lot of thinking. So we had a chat with Zooniverse and we were trying to understand how we can change that, especially in terms of helping young people to learn a bit more from their participation. So we did some pilots, like sending them regular newsletters about the findings that they contributed to find. But also we tried to, so Zooniverse has a task And for some of the tasks, they have the solutions and they check against the solutions to see how reliable you are. So we ask them whether we could put these tasks in front so that people can have some feedback on what they were doing. And in this way, they would be more motivated if they knew that they will receive feedback and it wasn't just like a strange tool that would never get back to them with some feedback. So that was something that increased motivation, but you understand, I mean, this universe is very big and their main interest is not about getting people to learn, but getting people to contribute. So it was difficult to persuade them to do it on a regular basis. But there are other things we could do. For example, working with the museums, they could also integrate hybrid events into the citizen science. So when we were starting with the BioBlitz and people meeting face to face, then they were more motivated to keep contributing online because they knew the community, they knew the researchers, and they were happier to engage with the entire project. So there were a few things that we tried and we have documented somehow here in the report. But if anybody wants to have a chat, I am happy to chat.
So I did quite a bit of work in citizen science back in 2013 to 2019, still going with microclass. And Stuart, his own corner, did quite a big survey of citizen science landscape in the past. I think our sector is really fortunate. We've got loads of projects around citizen science for heritage. And it's not just online, it's physical stuff, people going and doing things. But what are we doing wrong? So the universe gets thousands and thousands of people. Most heritage citizen science gets 300 people or less. Like Mark, Stuart, you probably found this when you're looking. There's lots of very niche projects. How do we make it so people have you found out much on that in terms of selling your product at the very beginning? Because it's always that building new come syndrome. Like you build a project, why will people use it? Maybe that's what I'm asking. So,
I'm not sure what is the background of your project, but but yeah, I think that many other projects have this question about why Universe is so popular. And the main answer to that is because it's very easy to participate. You don't even need to log in. You just jump on and contribute data. And then there are so many different disciplines and so many different ways to participate. So if you like annotating, you can just do that. If you like marking, then you can just do that.
Maybe it's comments actually about people found those universe projects, so that's quite useful comments about being found in the platform. And I think also there's projects like big ventures that are looking at AI in the landscape and identifying crop marks and sites. But Stuart, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I don't think it has particularly been answered since we worked on this, and you and I, Dan, spoke about this 10 years ago. I mean, my sense was, and I don't know if this is something that you found, but in citizen heritage projects, what you need to find are the obsessives. I mean, people with a lot of time on their hands who are really massively engaged with the subject, which I'm not sure you get quite as much with citizen science. You get a more, you top slice a lot of enthusiasm, but you don't tend to get obsession, particularly map projects. Funnily enough, for this audience, we found map digitization projects. I mean, yeah, the British Library had a couple of projects that had this. The Rumsey Centre in Stanford have run, and people get really into georeferencing maps, and so you tend to get a lot of traction in a small space of time. So I don't know why that is, what psychology behind that is, but it is a psychological answer, I'm sure.
Well, I think it's a multiple answers question, because it has to do about user behavior. It's not just one user, it's not just the one who is obsessed. There are many types of users. Some just jump on a project because they want to socialize and they feel lonely. We also have this type of participants, but it's also about helping them to remain motivated. So we developed a few gamification methods to help people remain motivated. For example, you can create like a leading board where people can compete, and you can say that, you know, the top user every month could get, for example, a free tour in this site, or, you know, something tangible, something more meaningful for them. Or you can create other type of gamification like awards and badges, and, you know, make it more playful if they don't have other motivations.
We gave away software licenses for doing 3D modelling for some of the tasks we were doing. So they were worth thousands and thousands of pounds, so people were quite keen to do it. And we got 100 3D models created by the public doing that. Like someone just said, all of this takes time. And I think that's something that we're not particularly rich with as academics, or
Yeah, usually all the projects have a comms officer who is responsible for that, and they have to do full time. But that's the issue we have with Enquire at the Open University. We have changed 7 funders since we initially started developing it. And every time you have to change what you're doing according to the funders' needs as well. But in this way, we just managed to maintain some funding for the platform.
but this is where we've got lots of opportunity though, really. We can hire some people to do interesting tasks at times. I think this is where we're talking a little bit at lunchtime to your group about citizen activism, how you can get well. So maybe this is a question you could be asking us about how you can use us and our technology to how what you want to do. And I think it also goes back as well to how people use our data in the first place. We are a little bit too controlling about how people do use our data. We always believe that it's the institution. Some of the projects that we had trouble with that last year, not necessarily there.
Just also note that some organizations like yours can easily engage schools as well. I don't think that any school would say no if you would approach them to engage in such a project. And in this way, you get to you get young people to know about this in an early stage, and then they kind of transfer it to their families while it was part of their education. So they are familiar with that if they come across that again, because many people, they hear the word citizen science, the phrase, and they're like, I don't know what it is, I just stay clear. So
I think Mia just commented another phrase for citizen science at one point. I cannot remember what she called it in one of her talks, but she's made it sound differently. She has got loads of ideas that we could talk about in another session. So maybe citizen science and this stuff should be more focused on the
Briefly, it's actually really relevant to us as well, because we have built this huge database of anthropology resources in terms of like documentation of material practices. And now we're thinking about the afterlife of the resources. So once they are online, they all have Creative Commons licenses, they are open access. What do we do with them? How do we encourage people to use them? We're thinking about schools, but also anthropology departments at universities, researchers, scientists, so that kind of like cultural heritage institutions. So how do we approach them? How do we do it in a way that's like user friendly for all the different audiences that we can reach, and how do you tailor it to the specific user you want to communicate with and make it easy for them to use it? So maybe doing case studies of use, like examples, storytelling as well. That's super popular, how to tell stories with the data. 3D modeling, how to build things from the resources. Because otherwise, what's the point, right, of building all this?
Well, what other researchers found useful is creating a case study that relates to real world and everyday things, so that people feel that they identify with what is out there. And also, I mean, researchers, as long as there is something that would provide them with impact, they would be happy.
What's up, Mark? This is over there because Heritage quite. You'd love to use systems to power your studies of what's going on in you.
Yeah.
And you talked about this before. And how do you think citizen science can help you with them? Is that too leading questions?
How will citizens help?
Yeah.
Well, I was just talking about this at lunchtime which was, we've got very good at dealing with serious and organised criminals, but that's about 20% of our work. 80% of our work is what the government would say is lower level antisocial behaviour happening in people's communities. 500,000 people own and manage heritage sites. Okay, some of the big charities, the church, look after about, I don't know, 30, 40,000 places. But the vast majority are owned, managed and cherished by the public. So we've got to find some way of really galvanising their support so that they're confident in us, so give them support and advice, and they're confident in law enforcement in that when they make contact, they're going to be listened to. The more data we get, the more intelligence we can analyse, the more effective we can be. So it's got to be the next big step.
So some of the tools you think they could be harnessed for what you want to do? Couldn't they, like the thing what you
What did you tell me to say? It's the best event I've ever been to.
Do you want to have a cookie?
Seriously, this couldn't have happened at a better time in where we are with the crime programme. This is the next big step.
I just wanted to add to that you get citizens to have ownership so that they don't feel anymore that's none of my business. They are part of it.
Absolutely. And the younger you can start, the better.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned. If you start at school time, then it's cultivated inside them.
And I have a very quick follow-up question related to what like Patricia she asked about like the difference between humanities and sciences. Have you noticed a difference in between like the scope in terms of like global south or like Western? Like what's the sort of the responses? Because for us it's very important to actually have more visitors from global south because that's where our projects, most of them take place. So it's like about like getting these communities to engage with these resources.
Yeah, I don't think I can answer this question because I haven't engaged in like a demographics stuff.
Yeah.
But at least I know from Universe that we had more people coming from the Northern Hemisphere, but that's probably because our recruitment was made by the UK and the US. I mean, we still have people like far away, East Asia and stuff, but not from the South, not a lot from the South.
Okay.
It's also very difficult for them, especially if you come to people in Africa. Like a few people that I interviewed, they didn't even have internet at their home. So they only had internet on their mobile phones and they had to find like a net cafe to have the interview with me with multiple interruptions. So I think it's also a matter of technology.
On the Microclass project, the person who contributed most was based in Africa in an aid compound. She did it in a container thing during her time. But she did thousands of tasks. She just was bored and not had something to do. And I think it is getting opportunities to allow people to do this stuff. So, like I said, for mobile signal, people are going to use resources. And one of the things you're seeing a lot of the things we're doing now is the very beginning way. I think loads of time to download. Clio is really slow on mobile. But it can't be because of the way it's built. The last website I built for the Fitzwilliam Museum, I made that work really, really fast. Since I've left, it's gone up from being 1 megabyte per homepage to 25. So when people are using it, it gets slower and slower. And we are now getting richer and richer with our web resources. So our colleague at sort of England, we look at our front page and how many images have we got on our page now? We've got loads and loads. We're not making it fly, we're making it just make an impact. It's not thinking about the user, and that's something we've really got to think about what we're doing. It's about how people can use it quickly and they don't disappear. And that's why like Pelagios, it's really stripped back and fast. At least it's fast, but it's not being overloaded by bots. Yeah.
We need to move on.
Okay, you see.
Oh, no, so the question.
Something.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Georgia Thorpe, and I currently work at the National Archives and I'm researcher there. It's a bit of a vocation. What about the paid voluntary labor in classrooms and citizen science? So we are relying more and more on these activities, but no one is addressing those problems, which is in terms of ethics is missing into consideration. No one is addressed.
Yeah, that's a philosophical question, and actually this is why in the last decade, all the people who are facilitating citizen science projects, they are starting to develop benefits for the users who participate. And this is why we introduced all the learning analytics and all the other benefits that the user can have. For example, they can be part of a publication if they contributed to explore something very significant that it's going out there. And also we make sure that they learn, they have some training before they engage or during their engagement. So, I mean, it is unpaid, but we provide them with all other benefits. And sometimes we try to engage people that what we are doing is close to their fields so that they can reuse it in their fields. For example, now I'm working with the Royal Society grant holder who wants to learn more about the cow microbe and how that can change so that it produces less methane. And she's trying to engage farmers. So it will be unpaid voluntary work, but farmers are really interested in the results. So the results will get back to them and they will improve their field. And this is what they get as payment.
I think this has to be taken into consideration at the beginning when whatever task is designed. It's becoming more and more important.
I think at the moment, the way it's addressed when it comes to ethics is that you have to provide benefits for those participating in the project, give them something back, even if that's just learning, which is a big thing for many who they have not had the chance to attend the university or something that could provide them with that learning.
I think it's a really interesting question as well. I'm sure, Stuart, you answered this when you did your survey about how we felt about unpaid labour. Did you guys have any report, Mark?
Yes, it's there somewhere.
So there is something you can point to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it really goes to this question about, you know, what is value beyond money, and, you know, what does that mean to different to these different user groups, different communities. I can dig out the what we wrote about this.
And I think this is something that's concerning you as well, right, Jude, with your group too, regarding.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ethics.
Do you want to introduce yourself? So.
Okay, sorry. Jude Fransman, I'm sort of affiliated with the Open University still, but Aisha, Anna and I are part of a community-based research group in our local council estate in North London, Harrogate, and we run a community-based research programme. But on the topic of unpaid labour, which I think is really important, we make sure that all of our researchers, community researchers, are paid for their knowledge, and it's not citizen science, so it's actually contributing expertise and knowledge about the different kind of topics that we research. But I think the other issue is also about representation. So as well as motivating different groups to engage, the question of who's going to be excluded because they just can't afford to invest that time, or other kind of obstacles. And I think the point that you made about the difference between young people, what they notice or what they're interested in. Obviously, it depends on the type of citizen science and what you're actually, if it's very kind of routine and doesn't involve a lot of thinking or analysis, then maybe it doesn't matter so much. But if it does involve like contributions, you're limited if you can't afford to make sure that you've got a diverse group of users. And I guess the final sort of comment, I don't know if anyone else has another view, is as I understand it, most citizen science tends to be focused on individual users, although you might work with schools. Or when you talk about users, is it sort of individual people having accounts and engage?
No, we also have groups groups like participating in museum events. And,
Right, okay, so that's really interesting as well, how the different dynamics between what motivates you if you're just an individual doing it in your own time versus if you're in a group, whether it's a museum setting or in our community, if we had an account for the community and different people who kind of contribute, then that becomes a part of discussion in relation to our other projects as well. So it's something quite different from if you're just sitting at home by yourself and you might have.
Yeah, definitely community is something that motivates people coming together to do things and not feeling lonely. But also on what you said before about diversity, we did notice that there were differences in participation between the young people who were having lower science capital and higher science capital. So those whose parents used to take them to museums before or used to sit and watch with them documentaries, they were more likely to participate and contribute higher quality data as well. So that's something that we have to take into account, that how we can better motivate those from lower backgrounds and try to lift them so that they can reach the same level with the rest of their kids and have this background before they become adults.